Hello, friends. You know, our country is really struggling right now because of hyper partisan politics. And for millions of us, that's created a lot of fear, anxiety, and hopelessness. Hopelessness because we feel like we're stuck in the middle of this blue versus red, blue states versus red states, Democrats versus Republicans. And we feel like we're in the middle with no voice, no power, no choices, and no power to make any change. You know, every 4 years since I've been voting, one candidate or another says, this is the most important election of our lifetime. Well, I'm here to tell you the reason for this channel is the upcoming 2026 midterm elections are the most important election of our lifetime because democracy has been slipping through our fingers. And if we don't do something, I don't know that we can recover from this. And so I want you to stay with me on this journey. We're going on this journey where I promise you we can create a pathway to power through nonpartisan knowledge and action. So we can change the outcome for 2026. And we're going to do that through something I call purple democracy. And our slogan here is strengthening democracy beyond party lines. And what that means is we are going to bring candidates from left to center, right to center, left, red, left, right, to the middle. Find candidates that know that this is the only way to get anything done, is to compromise, to meet in the middle, to reach across the aisle, whatever you want to call it. And we know that the current hyper-partisan mode doesn't work. Hence, we have a 34-day government shutdown and nothing is getting done. And so with this channel, we're going to make something happen. So my name is Michael P. and I'm here for your democracy on the Purple Media Network. So our democracy is on the brink of failure, but we're going to change that. And we're going to change that on the race to the 2026 elections, which is 1 year from today. So today, we've got a few things going on around the country, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Normally, even midterm elections aren't as consequential as full presidential year elections, but even now, an off year has quite a bit at stake. And so, like I said, in a second. So here's a little graphic for you. And in subsequent videos, we're going to try to add elements like this, a little bit of trivia, but more importantly, as we said, this is nonpartisan knowledge. And, you know, I'm no lawyer, I'm no expert on constitutional law or civics. So I'm joining this journey with you to either refresh or learn about these things. And on this channel, we're going to break down these politics so that everyday voters can understand these concepts. And I feel like if we understand these things, if we refresh these things or learn them for the first time, we're going to be able to participate in this process much more actively than if we hear something from somebody and we don't know, oh, is that true or isn't it? One common phrase you'll hear is, I serve or we serve at the pleasure of the president. And we're going to debunk that myth here in a moment. So as I said, we're going to do some recurring things on here. The trivia, the topics for the day, in some videos and why all these things matter to us on a day-to-day basis, because they directly do. And if it's because you're worried about your health care, you're worried about food assistance, or you're worried about your federal job, or you're worried about being identified or targeted because of your skin when you know you're a U.S. citizen, or you're a soybean farmer or a beef rancher. This is not, none of us are immune from any of this. So we're going to copy some of the things we know and apply those in this democratic process and take control. So here now, we kind of answer that trivia question. What are the three branches of the U.S. government? Where most people are familiar with the executive, especially right now, because that is our president, Donald Trump. And the other two branches are the legislative and judicial, mostly being the Supreme Court and other federal courts for the judicial. And then Congress, and as a lot of people have forgotten or don't know, so Congress is comprised of the Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives. So when we say Congress, we mean all of them. We have 100 senators and 435 members of the U.S. House of Representatives. So again, when we say Congress, that's everybody. But if we say, the House, we mean members of the House of Representatives. And unfortunately, in my opinion, these two other branches have given up a lot or most of their power to the executive branch. And we need to rebalance that. And that's what we're going to do here. And so when we talk about this channel, we're going to be breaking down these politics so everyone can understand it, talk about the political landscape, your state, your districts, and the candidates running in those. And really your political and constitutional rights and the Constitution itself. So with Purple Democracy, we're going to be identifying candidates that stand for these principles and stand for getting things done and not just there for power. And so I want to say to all the current politicians out there, we don't need you if you're afraid of not getting reelected. If you're afraid of that, we don't need you in this position because you're not there working on our behalf. You're working to stay in power and promote the party over the people. I saw this video recently of Texas Representative Ann Johnson talking to the Texas legislature. And if you don't know about this, you've probably heard all this talk about legislative redistricting. And this started with Texas and with Donald Trump pushing the Governor Abbott of Texas to redraw their lines, their district lines where voters vote and have already elected officials to represent them in these districts. And he wants Texas to redraw these lines in the middle of the decade, in the middle of already having redone those after the when they're usually done after the census, the every decade census. So he's pushing them to do this because he believes they can pick up to 5 seats in the House of Representatives from the Democrats. And he's doing that because of 2 reasons. He fears losing seats or not gaining seats and losing his power. And secondly, for the same reason they do many of the things they're doing right now, he's doing it because they can. And so Representative Johnson makes a very poignant speech some people are calling this one of the most important speeches, in a long, long time. And I'm going to play this for you, and I think you're going to agree that this is pretty meaningful of her standing up to this Texas legislature and what they're about to do.
Them than hear it from me. As a white woman and a daughter of a man of privilege and power, he knew that his strength was to bring people that didn't look like him to the table of government. And so 50 years later, after Barbara Jordan, aided by white people to have a voice, the first woman of color elected to the South, a woman who sat in the impeachment of Nixon, a woman who said that finally, after amendment, debate, and vote, I am finally part of we the people. To stand here as a 50-year-old woman and know that we now go back in time. So let's talk about cowardice and cheats. Because if you knew you could win this next election, you wouldn't be taking this effort to try to steal 5 seats from elected officials that members of color elected to represent them in Washington, D.C. You wouldn't be doing everything you can to take this coalition of diversity and stand up at the mic and say, why are we doing this? Because we can. And you shield your racism with your party, with ignorance and arrogance, to come up here and say, to be honest with you, I haven't read the bill from the other side. To be honest with you, I haven't talked to the lawyers to be bringing this before. Because you think that people will give you grace on ignorance and arrogance around party, because you can't admit that the root of all of this is about racism and power. A power grab, a pure power grab. And so I'm going to ask, don't shake your head, because I'm going to give you a moment to prove what you mean behind that. Because when Donald Trump called Georgia Republicans and said, hey boys, I need you to steal me almost 12,000 votes. To those men credit, they said, no sir. We already know what Governor Abbott said.
All right, as you saw, very meaningful stuff and very important to the concept of democracy and what we stand for. In this idea of doing things because we can, blowing up boats in the Caribbean because we can, because we have the satellite and military capability, when it's very likely this is in violation of international laws. So just because we can doesn't make it right. And that's where my big disclaimer comes in. I want this to be purple democracy. I want to have candidates coming in from both sides to work together to get things done in Washington. And so it might seem incongruous that I am depicting things about the Republican Party, the ruling Republican Party, President Trump, that would make it seem like I am totally backing the Democratic Party and putting my thumb on the scale for them and trashing Republicans. But I found really no alternative to this, because the ruling Republican Party has thrown out the rule book on democracy, on the rule of law, on respect for the courts, on respect for the Constitution, on respect for their oath of office. So the majority, the overwhelming majority of Republican Congresspeople have violated these principles. And thus, our Political Action Committee will not be endorsing most of those for their next midterm election. And with that being said, that is the principle here, is that you can bring candidates from either side to the process, to the middle. And if they meet, you're going to see some criteria that we're setting up. If they meet these criteria, very simple, everything they should be doing right now according to the law and their oaths of office. This is not difficult. So we will make endorsements from candidates from either side. And you'll see what those principles are here in just a second. So I wanted to add another point here. I'm going to show you something else that shows that our president is a pathological liar. He is, I'm not a mental health professional, but we lay people call this a psychopath. He's a prolific liar. He doesn't even know what comes out of his mouth. And here I'm going to show you something. Here was two sources that fact checked everything he said through, from his 2016 election. And while I'm telling you this, I'm going to tell you something. When I bring in data here, one of the big sources that I use is a site called Ground News, and I'll show you something from that in an upcoming video where they tell us an article, something going on, and they'll tell you they covered this piece from, they found 15 different articles, and they'll say 9 were from center, what would be considered center-leaning publications, and 3 from the left and 2 from the right. So they'll give you high probability of accuracy to these. And so as we go through this process, fact check everything. Don't just believe what I tell you or someone else tells you, Joe Rogan tells you. You need to find out for yourself, because there is so much misinformation. In the last couple of days, really disappointing, a congressperson from Arizona reposted a picture of Arizona teachers wearing t-shirts that implied problem solved, meaning the Charlie Kirk assassination was solved, and they had blood all over the t-shirts. Well, this was a fake picture, and this went out, and 3 million people saw his posting, and a great majority of those probably believed it. And so today, when you hear anything, you see anything online, question it. And then we're going to get to a little fact checking here on our president. I'll get out of the way here so you can see this. So 2 prominent sources fact check what he's saying, something called PolitiFact and the Washington Post fact checker. And I won't have you read the whole thing, but the bottom line is, this is his 2016 presidency, that PolitiFact said that he lied, and what they said, or told falsehoods, what they consider half-truths, sketchy claims, etc. They consider a lie to be intentional. But as I said, who knows? So much stuff comes out of his mouth. But the bottom line is that 76% of his statements were considered mostly false, or pants on fire. The Washington Post fact checkers said during this time he had over 30,000 falsehoods, statements that he made during that presidency. And they said pretty much over about 70% of what he said was not true. Now here in this next video, just one of the most recent things, he was talking about remodeling the White House. And he said months ago in July that he wouldn't be touching any of the historic original White House.
It'll be built over on the east side. It won't interfere with the current building.
That's what President Trump said back in July about the construction of the ballroom here at the White House. Fast forward a few months, and White House officials now say that the entire East Wing is going to be demolished to make room for the president's construction project. Inside the West Wing here, President Trump just showed off renderings of how big the new ballroom will be. The footprint is nearly twice the size of the executive mansion here.
I think it'll be one of the great ballrooms anywhere in the world. It's about $300 million. It's set to do many, many things, including meetings of foreign leaders, including the honoring of foreign leaders.
And to be clear, not everybody is happy about it. The National Trust for Historic Preservation, as it's called, just sent a letter to the Trump administration warning them that the planned ballroom will overwhelm the White House. And now members of Congress are expressing their concerns.
We're talking about building a ballroom when we're trying to get the economy squared away. Timing's bad.
People are saying, oh, the government's being destroyed. Well, now it looks like the White House is physically being destroyed.
But the White House says the
Yeah, the timing is kind of bad. Yeah, I mean, do you, sitting at home, do you care that he's building a ballroom, or that he just remodeled the Lincoln bathroom? That's kind of all over YouTube now. You can see that, and he posted 25 pictures of it yesterday. Very proud of this bathroom remodel. You know, many of us, we don't blame people for voting for Donald Trump in the 2020. I mean, there's certainly, in hindsight, a lot of signs looking back to his previous presidency, because he promised us things, and it sounded great, and it sounded like it was really focused on the people, the everyday person, the everyday voter. But in action, the presidency couldn't be anything farther from the truth right now. And so this is why, again, back to that, I can't go along with anything President Trump or the Republican Party is doing, including this government shutdown right now, which they are blaming totally on the Democrats. Several politicians, oh, there's nothing else we can do. It's out of our hands. The Democrats control it. Well, they control every facet of the government right now, including, if you will, the Supreme Court. So this is really just another falsehood. So you could see here, again, back to the disclaimer I started to talk about, is that they have almost to a person broken their oaths of office. They're derelict in their duties and their responsibilities, and they've chosen the party and power over the people. And this is why we have to fight back. I was going to try to have this, all these animations float in, but it doesn't seem to be working right now. So, because I wanted to kind of have a little fun and test you on this too, because we hear this statement so often that from the current ruling party that I've heard the Speaker of the House say this. I've heard the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, say this, and many other people, that we serve at the pleasure of the president. So that's why we're doing what we're doing in this moment. And so when we go to the next slide, I want to have you understand how each branch of the government, who they actually serve in the pleasure of. And a little spoiler alert, it's not the president. So here it is. In the Constitution, the president swears an oath to, first and foremost, the Constitution. Senators, they swear an oath, first and foremost, to the Constitution. The members of the House of Representatives, same thing, to the Constitution. The Supreme Court justices, to the Constitution. none of them to any individual. And let's go on to military personnel, which with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump are trying to politicize the military, which has never been, for very good reasons, supposed to be politicized and used as a political tool. And their first and foremost oath is to the Constitution. Yes. Secondly, their oath says to lawful orders from the president and their superiors. Now, we'll get into in another video what a lawful order is. But it isn't just an order from the president saying, we want you to go to Washington, D.C. or New York City or Seattle or Portland or Chicago or Memphis and harass the people on the streets. Those are not lawful orders. And there's something called the Posse Comitatus Act. And we'll get into that. Again, one of those things that when you know it and someone says, well, the president has the right to send the troops in, wherever he wants. No, he doesn't. 100% he does not. Now, Washington, D.C. is a little bit different animal because it's not a state. And we'll talk a little bit about that again in another video. So I want you to take this piece particularly away today and know that you can use that when someone says, well, the president is just, using his power. No, he's abusing his power. So we're going to take that back. And again, why all this matters is because to the MAGA movement and millions and tens of millions of people out there, they believe this stuff. Donald Trump famously has said, he learned this from his lawyer mentor, tell a lie often enough and it becomes a truth. And he has lived his life and his celebrity career and his political career with this belief. And so it matters to all of us citizens, because we see what's happening now and we see that democracy is slipping through our fingers. I said I would get to something we call the 5 commandments, and this is what we're going to do when we talk about candidates in the future. And some of the things we're going to be doing is try to reach out to the candidates and say, do you believe in this? Will you commit to this? And if you do, when the election time comes up, we're going to tell you, hey, in whatever state you're in, Florida or Michigan or wherever, this person has said they do believe in this. And if they're a new Republican candidate, well, then maybe there's somebody, because that we can consider voting for office. Because if they believe in this, it doesn't matter if they lean conservative or more liberal. They're going to try to do what's right. Now, they may come at a problem from a little different perspective, and maybe it's immigration or education or whatever. But that's where the people are going to work it out. So these 5 commandments, as I said, they're not foreign. These are part of their oath of office, part of the law, part of what the norms for 249 years have told us.